Good morning, everyone. Department of Civil Engineering of PHI Tech welcomes you all for the third day of the webinar series on advanced techniques in civil engineering. Today, we are having our beloved professor, Dr. Perumal, with us to enlighten us on the field of finite element method. He will brief us the simple ways to learn the finite element method. We welcome Dr. Perumal. Welcome all the faculty members, students, and industrial persons who are here to listen to Dr. Perumal. Today, before starting this session, I'm taking immense pleasure in introducing our professor to you. Dr. Perumal is born in 1953 in a small village from Perambalur district. He has graduated from AC Alagappa Chettiar College of Engineering and Technology, Karaikudi. He has completed his master's degree in structural engineering from Government College of Technology, Coimbatore. He has completed his PhD under the guidance of Dr. R. Vaidyanathan from GCT in the year 1995. He started his career as in the construction industry. After a short period of fieldwork, he entered into polytechnic teaching and served there for 7 years. For about 36 years, he had taught civil engineering in the government engineering colleges, Tamil Nadu. Later, he served as professor and principal in self-financing colleges. Presently, he is working as professor of civil engineering at PHI Tech. So he has 43 years of teaching experience in total to his credit. During his tenure as a professor, he has visited Singapore, Thailand, Maldives, Indonesia, and leading universities in the United Kingdom. The trip to United Kingdom was a TechCube-sponsored one for about 10 days, where he visited many universities. During his government service, he had actually involved in testing and consultancy activities in the fields of structures and soil consultancy, and was instrumental for generating a good amount of revenue to the government. Not only in teaching, in research, he has published 85 technical papers in journals and conferences. He has guided 9 PhD students and 9 were awarded under his guidance. He is famous for his structural analysis books. He has authored 8 books along with his professor Dr. R. Vaidyanathan and 4 more books for +2 vocational stream students of Craftsman's course for the Directorate of School Education, Tamil Nadu. His latest book in the above list is on Structural Analysis Volume 3, Meeting the Revised Requirements of Unionized Syllabus of Regulations 2017. This book is with PHI Tech affiliation and authored by Dr. R. Vaidyanathan, Dr. P. Perumal, and Dr. M.I. Abdul Alim, HOD of Civil Engineering. He has also held the post of Assistant Controller of Examinations, Zonal Officer, Chairman for Board of Studies, Member of Academic Council, Convener and member in several committees including AICT Inspection Committee, and has visited more than 100 engineering and polytechnic colleges. He is a lifetime member of Indian Society for Technical Education and Fellow of Institution of Engineers, India. He has received the Lifetime Achievement Award from ISTE in the year 2019, December month, which is the latest event. Currently, Dr. Perumal is delivering lectures in structural analysis and uploading those video lectures in YouTube. So we welcome you, sir, and we are ready to hear your lecture on finite element method.
Thank you, Professor Balakumar, for a very nice introduction. On behalf of PHI Tech and on behalf of Department of Civil Engineering, I welcome all the participants, professors, friends, faculty members from engineering colleges, engineers from industries, and Professor Gajendran of PHI Tech, Professor Shakti Prasad. I welcome all of you, wholeheartedly welcome all of you. Now, after for the past 50 to 60 years, 5 to 6 decades, there are a lot of enormous growth in the development of numerical methods and also large high-speed computers. So these two have made possible the advent of the finite element analysis of structures, not only structures and other fields also. And because of its wide base, the finite element method has become very popular among all. Right. Now, the finite element, let me briefly introduce and go to the topic because there's a lot of things to be discussed. Finite element method is based on the principle of discretization. There are three numerical methods. One is finite difference method, in which the governing differential equation is discretized into number of parts. In the finite element method, the physical body or the continuum or the structure that constitute the system is discretized or divided into number of elements. And in boundary element, only the boundary of the body is divided into a number of segments or elements. Now, finite element method actually was originally developed in aircraft industry. We know how complex an aircraft structure is. It was originally developed in aircraft industry to facilitate a refined analysis of complex airframe structures. Now, the procedure originally was developed as a concept of structural analysis, but the wider basis of the method makes it applicable to a variety of field problems such as heat conduction, fluid flow, hydroelasticity, diffusion convection, mathematical physics, etc., in addition to structural analysis. Now, every structure may be, this is a basic concept, every structure may be considered to be an assemblage of finite number of individual structural elements or components. So, a simple beam is shown. This can be divided into 4 elements or 40 elements or 100 elements, depending upon the solution facility available. But it can be divided into infinite number of elements, but here we limit the number of elements and number of nodes. It is divided into a number of elements, or the beam is considered to be an assemblage of number of elements. Similarly, a rectangular plate is shown, that is assumed to be an assemblage of 4 triangular elements. Now, the elements can be put together in a number of ways and therefore can be used to represent extremely complex geometries. That is, we can combine a 2-dimensional element, a 3-dimensional element, a line element, a triangular element, a rectangular. All these can be combined. Different material properties also can be combined. So here, a structure or a continuum is considered to be an assemblage of 2D elements or 3D elements, and with finite number of interconnections. That is finite. Number of elements is finite. Number of interconnection is also finite. And the discretization or dividing the structure is only of a physical nature, but there is no approximation in the mathematical analysis of the structure. So we have mixed assemblage in which you have triangular elements, square element, quadrilateral element, a line element, everything can be combined. And in every element, we can combine 2 different materials, 3 different materials. That is why the method has become so popular. Now, so we know what is discretization. It is dividing the structure or the continuum into number of elements, or the structure is considered to be an assemblage of number of elements as closely as possible to resemble the original structure. Now, there are basic steps, 7 steps. First, I will summarize. Number one is discretization of the structure or dividing the structure into number of elements. That is the first one. Second one, over individual elements, we assume the variation of displace, because we are going to follow displacement based approach. So, over the length of the element or over the area of the element, how the displacement varies, that we assume. That is the second step. Third step, we develop the stiffness matrix for the element and nodal load vector for the element. That is element generation of element properties. So, fourth step, so we just generate all these things for an element, assemble everything for the total structure. Suppose the the structure is divided into 10 elements, assemble everything and get the stiffness matrix for the total structure or load vector for the total structure, global stiffness matrix and global load. That is fourth step. Number 5 is introduction of boundary conditions. Introduction. Why you have to introduce boundary condition? We'll discuss at that point, right? Introduction of then solution of the equilibrium, solution of the equations and getting the primary unknowns. So when we follow displacement based approach, the primary unknowns will be the displacements. So we evaluate the primary unknowns. Then from the primary unknowns, getting the secondary unknowns, namely from the displacement we get the strains, from the strains we get stresses, and all these things we do. And then based on that we go for the design, redesign, etc. So these are the basic steps. I will try to introduce all these steps in a brief manner so that you will be tempted to just go through any finite element book. Right now, coming to discretization, we have to decide so many things. One is number of elements, how many elements to which the structure is to be divided into, and size of the element, size of each element. Then type of elements. So type of elements depends upon, there are one-dimensional elements, two-dimensional element, and three-dimensional element, and also axisymmetric elements. So how the structure is to be divided into. Then that is decided by the geometry of the structure. Then considering one element, how many independent coordinates are to be, you are considering only axial displacement, or axial displacement, lateral displacement, or reaction and rotation, namely shear force and bending moment, that we have to decide. And the original body is to be simulated as closely as possible. Now, the judicial way of discretization of a structure will come with experience. It is not an easy, because sometimes in the question paper they will give a simple structure, and discretization of the structure will be given as a full question. It is not a question of just dividing into number of elements. That requires a lot of things to be considered. So that requires a lot of experience. That will come only by experience. And for discretization, there are general rules, several general rules as guidelines that we can follow. Even then, that will come only out of experience. Anyway, now these are some of the structures. So the structures can be generally classified into discrete structural systems and a continuum. Discrete structural system consists of beams, continuous beams, plane truss, plane frame, three-dimensional truss, grid structure, three-dimensional frame. These are all discrete structures. So these can be discretized using one-dimensional elements. These structures can be discretized using one-dimensional elements. Right. Right. Now, next on the right-hand side we have continuum. Continuum will have a continuous surface. It may be plates, it may be shells, cooling towers, plane stress problem, plane strain problem, or other three-dimensional structures. So whichever constitutes a continuous surface, these are called the continuum. Right. Now here, so we have to decide whether the structure is to be discretized into one-dimensional element. One-dimensional means framed structures can be conveniently divided into number of one-dimensional elements. So two-dimensional element, I think will not take much time on this. Three-dimensional elements, dams, walls, etc. In fact, all structures are three-dimensional. Even if you take a pencil, it is a three-dimensional structure. But we approximate. When you analyze a beam, considering it as a one-dimensional element, you will be able to get sufficient accuracy of the results. Therefore, we treat them as one-dimensional element. For practical purposes, almost all structures are three-dimensional structures. We idealize them as one-dimensional, two-dimensional, and three-dimensional. So axisymmetric structures, namely pressure vessels, cooling towers, common base for foundation, etc. Right. So that's about the classification of structures and the number of elements. This will give some guidelines as to the discretization of the structure. Right. Coming to elements, we have got a basic element, one-dimensional element with the two nodes. Sometimes to increase the accuracy of the solution, we add internal nodes, maybe 1, 2, etc. internal. So I will not have connection with the adjacent elements. E will be connected external nodes. E stands for the external nodes. that will be connected to the adjacent elements, I internal nodes that is only for improving the accuracy of the solution. So H element. Next is curved element. So on the right hand side, we have got some examples how a column is discretized into number of elements, how a beam or portal frame is divided into a number of line elements. The next one is that of a circular column, circular water tank or ring beam support a number of columns, how that is used, how that is discretized into number of curved elements. So just an example how to discretize a structure. Now these are left hand side two-dimensional elements, maybe a triangular element, rectangular element, triangular element, so on. The next second triangular element is supposed to be given with 6 nodes, 3 external nodes and 3 internal nodes, that is not marked. So these are some other two-dimensional elements. On the right hand side, an example of a rectangular plate, how it is divided or discretized into 4 triangular elements. One example. Right. Now, next one is that of three-dimensional element. You've got number of three-dimensional elements. One example is shown. So analysis used for the analysis of three-dimensional structures. Next is that of an axisymmetric element. If you want to analyze the ring beam of a water tank, the cross section, if it is rectangular, can be divided into 2 triangular or 2 rectangular or 2 square elements. So that is what are the different types of elements available, how it can be used for dividing a structure into number of elements. Now, coming to division, that is about the number of types of structures and the number of types of elements. Next is we've got number of guidelines. Coming to division of structure into continuum, there are some obvious in dividing the structure into number of elements or dividing the structure with the number of nodal lines. There are some guidelines. So the guidelines are given here. These are the guidelines. See, suppose if there are point loads, so necessarily you must have a node under the point load. And the remaining structure, you can have it one element or 3 elements, that is dependent. So, but at the point of concentrated loads, you must necessarily have a node. Similarly, wherever there is a change in the rate of loading, the plate on the right hand side is subject to 3 different rates of load. Wherever the rate of loading changes, we can have a nodal line, and further you can divide it into any number of elements. Next, there is a column with 3 steps. So wherever there is a change in the cross section, there you must have a node. And now coming to this re-entrant corner in a slab, there is a re-entrant corner. So that junction, we can have a node. Similarly, on the right hand side, you have got a dam profile. So consists of concrete, masonry, and then soil below. So wherever there is a material change, you can have a nodal line. So these are some guidelines for discretizing structure into number of elements. Yes, that is about obvious locations for nodes and nodal lines. There is another important factor that has an effect on the finite element solution. One is that is called aspect ratio. Aspect ratio. Suppose we take a 2-dimensional element, the largest dimension by the smallest dimension is called as an aspect ratio. So that also plays an important role. So largest dimension by smallest dimension, the optimum aspect ratio depends upon the difference in the rate of change of displacement in different directions. Suppose if we want to divide a one-way slab into number of elements, we assume that the slab is assumed to bend along the shorter span direction. Along the longer span direction, we are not assuming. So we consider 1 meter length in longer span direction, that is adopted for the entire design. Therefore, here the main direction is namely shorter direction. There you can have smaller width, and the other direction you can have longer width. Longer width also, you cannot have 3, 4, 5 either. So around 2, that will be ideal. Largest dimension by shortest dimension, up to 2 it is okay. But suppose if we take a 2-way slab, say 5 meters by 5 meters. So we assume the slab to bend in both directions. So 5 meters means the same rate of way. That means in that case, the closer the aspect ratio to unity, the better will be the quality of solution. Therefore, that depends upon the rate of change of displacements. You cannot blindly divide the structure into number of elements, right? That is aspect ratio. Then next is finite representation of infinite bodies. Suppose you want to analyze a dam by using finite element analysis. So dam is of one material, then foundation is of another material, namely concrete. Then below that you got earth. So actually, the earth also is going to behave along with the behavior of the dam. So we cannot omit earth. How much part of earth? Because on either side, on all the sides around, you'll have infinite length. But what is the part of the earth that is to be considered in the discretization? There is a guideline. 2 times width of the base on either side. Similarly, 3 to 5 times the breadth as the depth of the soil to be considered in the discretization. So this also has to be included in the discretization, and that is about the boundary condition that is to be adopted there. So this is finite representation of infinite bodies. Then, not only that, another important factor is labeling of nodes and elements. Because, see, finally, we have done number of problems in matrix stiffness method. See, the stiffness matrix will be having values only along the leading diagonals. There will be a band of values. All other values will be zeros. Now, in finite element analysis, it is possible to, so there are a number of numerical techniques that we are going to discuss later. Anyway, I'll just briefly introduce them. There are techniques available to store only the values within the half bandwidth, semi bandwidth, and that will give the solution at a faster rate. Now, coming to that point, so the semi bandwidth is d plus 1 in df. Now, coming to a structure, suppose if the rectangular plate that is shown is to be discretized, right? Now, which is better, along the longer direction or along the shorter direction, which will give a solution faster? So let us say we are going to divide this into a number of elements. At each node, let us assume displacement of the x direction, y direction. Displacement of x direction is u, along the y direction is v. Right. Now coming to the discretization, yes, this is the plate that we have discussed. Left hand side xerox is not clear, no problem. Only in the first case on the left hand side, it is discretized along the longer direction 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That is the node numbers. Similarly, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 up to 24 along the longer direction. Similarly, the elements are also numbered in the shorter direction 1 to 5, 6 to 10, etc. In the second case, it is along the shorter span direction. That is 1 to 4, 5 to 8, 9 to 12, etc. Elements are also divided 1 to 3 in the shorter span direction. So these are the two different way of numbering the nodes and the elements. That is what labeling is, assigning numbers to the nodes and the elements. Right. Now, here we take any element. Let us take in the first case, element number 10. Element number 10, what is the largest difference in the node numbering? 11, 12, 18, 17. 18 is the largest, 11 is the smallest. So the difference in node numbering is 7. All elements it will be the same. All elements it will be like that. Suppose we take element number 1, it is 1, 2, 8 on the left hand side, it will be 7. So highest number is 8, smallest number is 1. So the difference will be 7. For all elements, the difference in node numbering will be 7. Right. Coming to the right hand side, the difference in node numbering will be 5. We can check. So suppose we take number 15. So highest number is 24. Smallest number is 19. Difference is 5. It will be applicable for all. So from the first case it is 7. Second case it is 5. Right. Now, if in the case of this, when we assume 2 displacements per node, so it will be 2 into 24, 48 elements will be there. 48 displaces will be there. The size of the stiffness matrix will be 48 by 48. So 48 by 48, if we have to store 2304 elements. But for reducing this, there is a possibility. Now here there are two possibilities. One is, yes. Now here in the first, it is 7, second is 5, we already discussed. Now the semi bandwidth equal to D plus 1 into F, where D is the largest difference in the node numbering, a plus 1 plus F into F. F is the degrees of freedom. We have assumed U displacement and V displacement per node. So there are 16. So that is B equal to 16. In the second case, same is 12. Right. Now, the semi bandwidth includes the diagonal element also. So 16 includes one diagonal element plus 15. So that is the bandwidth. So bandwidth will be 31. So 16 plus 15, 31. But we are going to consider only the semi bandwidth. Semi bandwidth is 16. There are 48 rows. So 48 into 16 is 768. So where we are supposed to solve 2304 elements, now it is enough if you store only 768 elements. Same thing when we go for the second way of labeling or assigning numbers to nodes and elements, it is the semi bandwidth is 12. Therefore, 12 into 48 will be 576 elements. So in the place where it is supposed to store 2304, we have reduced to 768. Now 768 by way of numbering along the shorter direction, it is reduced to 576 elements. There are techniques available in finite element analysis to store only these 576 elements and give you the solution at a faster rate. Right. That is about the numbering. So it is better to number or label along the shorter span direction, which saves the storage requirement and also reduces the solution time. Right. Now coming to this one. Now in finite element analysis, we have got more the number of elements, better will be the solution. Right. Now coming to go fast. Now let us assume that we want to find out the area of the circle. So we try by both inside polygon and outside polygon. When we consider inside polygon, the suppose to consider a square dividing the structure into 4 elements. The area that is omitted outside the square is more. Therefore, that will give you a lesser area. This will give you a lower bound solution. So it's up when we go for hexagon, so the area that is omitted becomes less. When you go for octagon, the area still becomes less. So compared to first one, second one will give better solution. Compared to third one will give still better solution. That is outside polygon. That will give lower bound solution. Now coming to the second one, outside polygon. So now the area is more, excess area. So first solution will give a very large value. Actually the area is 1.786. So it gives 2.25. Second gives 1.945 because the excess area outside the circle is less. Similarly, in the case of say hectagon. So this still it is less, 1.864. This is actually available in finite element analysis book by C.S. Desai. Nowadays this book is not found in libraries. Very old book, very good book. Anyway, coming to yes, this is the solution. So this is the curve at the bottom. The bottommost uniform curve is inside polygon. Second one, the topmost is for the outside polygon. So, but these two, when you increase the number of elements, it is consecutively approaching the true solution. So this is what is called convergence. After convergence is the process of consecutively approaching the true solution. The other one is, say there are two solutions. One is monotonic convergence. Monotonic convergence means the process of successively approaching the true solution. That is what is called the monotonic convergence. The other one is that of non-monotonic convergence, where there will be fluctuations, plus, minus, variations, everything will be there. That is called monotonic. We prefer monotonic convergence. Convergence, for which not only the number of elements, but also we have to assume the displacement function. For assuming displacement function, which is the next point, there are certain rules. There are certain requirements, convergence requirements that we will discuss later. So this is about convergence. number of elements, monotonic and non-monotonic. Right. Now coming to the next point. So the whatever we have discussed so far is a brief outline about the discretization of a structure. These are all the points that have to be remembered for discretizing a structure into number of elements. Right. Now, selecting the element functions. Selecting the element function means over the element that is considered, you have to assume the variation of the displacement. So, variation of displacement, there are for deriving the properties, these are the approaches: displacement approach, force approach, etc. But displacement approach is more popular and widely used, and simple and also easily applicable. Therefore, we follow displacement-based finite element approach. Actually, in surveying, we follow whole to part. Now, in finite element analysis, we go from part to whole. We evaluate the properties of one element, assemble everything, and assemble the whole structure. Yes. Now, next is so that is about the different methods of deriving the properties. Assume simple displacement function to approximate the. Suppose we consider linear element over the linear element, we are going to assume the variation of displacement. The variation may be constant, variation may be linear, variation may be quadratic, third degree, and so on. Right. So the more the number of terms, the better will be the solution. That also depends. So that depends on the behavior of the structure. It has to match with the behavior of the structure. So these functions that are assumed, that is, they are called the displacement models or displacement functions or displacement fields. So the polynomial for one dimensional, you can take this polynomial. Suppose yes, if you want to choose n, we can start with a1 plus a2x plus a3x squared, where a's are generalized coordinates or generalized displacement models. And coming to this, suppose we take more number of terms, the more closely the solution will be represented. Exact solution will be represented. Right. And for two-dimensional element, we can go for Pascal triangle. So Pascal, this is the Pascal triangle. So it will be consisting of 1 x, y, x square, x, y square, etc. So up to x to the power 4, 5, 6, 7, like that, we just go on increasing. I have given only part of the Pascal triangle. Right. We can take any number of terms. Now, one example is given at the bottom. For a Pascal, for a triangular element, you can assume this is for a constant strain triangle. We can assume, suppose we take two displacements, u and v. U can be taken as a1 plus a2x plus a3y, first and second row only. But we can take more number of nodes. I can take a4 x square, a5 xy, a6 y square, and so on. Right. So this is for a constant strain triangle. Why it is called a constant strain triangular element means on the right hand side is given epsilon x is dou u by dou x, that is equal to a2, epsilon y equal to dou v by dou y equal to a6. So they are in terms of constants. That is why the displacement function that is assumed is for a constant strain triangle. Right. Now for a three-dimensional element, we will have to take a Pascal tetrahedron. So here we have to take a1 plus a2x plus a3y plus a4z plus a5x square plus a6xy, like that we take from the Pascal. This is for a three-dimensional element, Pascal tetrahedron. Right. Now coming to this one. So that is about the displacement model. Displacement model is assuming the variation of displacement over the element considered, maybe for one dimensional, maybe two dimensional, maybe three dimensional, assuming the variation of the displacement over the model. That is right. Now, next is that of derivation element properties. So we have discretized the structure in the number of elements. We have assumed the variation of displacement. Now coming to this, for each and every type of element, we have to derive the stiffness matrix and also nodal load vector. So this is called the element property, derivation of element stiffness matrix and element load vector. For getting the element stiffness matrix, there are two approaches. One is elementary approach, the other one is using shape functions. Using shape functions will be more popular and general, right? And coming to a truss element and coming to a beam element, we'll take simple examples to discuss the procedure. So one is that of the elementary approach. In the elementary approach, we know the stiffness matrix K equal to AE by L, etc. This I don't want to take much time because we assume the displacement U1 equal to unity, find out the force at node number 1 and 2, form the first column. Then assume displacement U2 equal to unity, find out the force at node number 1, node number 2, get the second column. We get AE by L. So it's a very basic derivation. Let us avoid concentrating on this, right? So this is one approach using the elementary approach, right? Second one is that of using shape functions. Shape functions are simple functions. Shape functions are simple functions used to represent the variation. That is also for variation of showing the. So there we have assumed polynomials. Here we are going to assume shape functions. So this is also for showing the variation of displacement. Now this expresses the shape of the. So there we may not be aware of the actual variation of the displacement. Now here this will indicate how the displacement varies over the element. So actually derivation of shape factor for different types of elements will be a separate chapter, full chapter, right? Now coming to this, we'll discuss only the basics, right? Now coming to shape function, when you take a truss element, so truss element consists of two nodes. So when we assume axial displacement only along node number 1 and 2, there are two displacements or there are 2 degrees of freedom. Accordingly, the polynomial will be consisting of two terms, a1 plus a2x. Suppose if there are 4 displacements, it will be consisting of a1 plus a2x plus a3 x square, and that depends upon, right? That will come next, right? Now n1. So using this, we derive the shape function. Derivation is not dealt with here. Derivation n1 for one-dimensional will be x2 minus x by L, n2 equal to x minus x1 by L. When we take x2 equal to L, one element with x1 equal to origin and x2 equal to L, then n1 equal to 1 minus x by L, n2 equal to x by L. Now n equal to n1 and n2, where n1 equal to 1 minus x by L, n2 equal to x by L. Now this n value will be very useful after deriving. So derivation of shape function, then applying the shape function for getting the stiffness matrix. So not only stiffness matrix but also load vector, right? Now this n you have to remember, right? Now coming to this. Now the stiffness matrix can be generally derived. The basic derivation is there. It contains lot of derivations. Of course, it is a numerical subject, consists of lot of derivations, etc. Right? Now we have been discussing about the stiffness matrix. K equal to B transpose B into dx into D. D is the elasticity matrix. For an axially loaded member, D is the value of AE. For a flexural member, it is EI. Similarly, for different types of elements, plane stress, for various types of elements, a D matrix is available in the library in the finite element analysis software. Right now, B equal to here for this member, B equal to dx, d by dx of n. So where we use the shape function, right? So using this, we can find out there is a separate procedure. So using the value of n, AE, etc., we get k equal to because k equal to B trans. This is general equation. What is given at the bottom is a general equation. So for getting the value of B, we need the value of n using the shape function. This is a stiffness matrix for a plane beam element. We have considered 4 displacements here. Therefore, there will be four values in the function, and this is the matrix that we have derived using the element approach. What we do is along V1, we have seen unit displacement. Get the first column, find out the force in all the coordinates, and find out the first column. Apply unit displacement along theta1. Get the second column. Like that, using elementary approach, we can just get the 4x4 matrix, 4x4 stiffness matrix. Now again using the, suppose if you consider only rotational degrees of freedom, theta1 and theta2, that 4x4 will become 2x2. Right now, coming to shape function, using shape functions, we can derive n1 equal to n2 equal to n3 equal to n4 equal to for a 2-dimensional element for the 4 displacements that are considered. See here, we have taken 4 displacements. Yes, here we have considered V1 theta 1, V2 theta 2. There are 4 displacements we have considered. So for these 4 displacements, we can derive 4 values N1, N2, N3, N4. These are the values. These are the derived values. Derivation is available, but we've got a lot of basics to be discussed, right? N1, N2, N3, N. So this is the N vector, right? So N, right? N matrix. N equal to N1, N2, N3, N4, where N1 equal to 1 minus 3 x square by L square, and so on, right? This is the displacement. This is the stiffness matrix for the element, for the beam element that is considered. So for the beam element, the D matrix is EI, flexural rigidity. So B transpose D into B into dx. So B is given by d square by dx square of n. N just now we have discussed. Using this, we can derive the stiffness matrix. When we derive using this, we'll get the same values, right? Now, that is about the derivation of stiffness matrix. So using the shape functions. Next is, for the element, you have to derive 2 things, because we know the basic equilibrium equation is for the element, it is small k into delta or into delta equal to P. The yes equation is available here. Small k is the element stiffness matrix, P is the nodal load vector, delta is the displacement, unknown displacement. This is for the element. Now we have discussed K. Now we will discuss what is P. So these 2 we have derived. And so for getting the nodal load vector, we have got direct method or lumped load method, in which you got method of inspection, method of equivalent joint loads. Method of inspection is a very crude method, and the next method is that of variational method, again using the shape functions. These are the 2 different methods available for the derivation of nodal load vector. So method of inspection is a very crude method, we'll just skip. This is the method of equivalent joint. So that is in the place of UDL. So UDL causes the reactions, upward reactions, WL by 2, WL by 2, and the moments, etc. So in the place of UDL, if the forces are applied as shown on the right hand side, WL by 2 downwards, WL by 2 downwards, etc., that will also cause the same reaction as shown on the left hand side. Therefore, the one that is shown on the right hand side, which is going to cause the same reaction, they are called the equivalent joint loads, because finite element method deals with the nodal forces and the nodal displacement. You can find out any value anywhere, but basically it deals with this nodal forces and the nodal displacement. So all forces are to be considered in terms of nodal loads along the direction of the displacement we assume, right? Now coming to this, this is the these are the 2 methods. One is the method of inspection, the other method of equivalent joint loads. So same nodal load vector we can derive using the shape functions. So PE equal to integral over length. This is for a linear element. If it is 2-dimensional element, over the area. If it is 3-dimensional element, over the volume. So for a linear element, integral over the length L, N transpose F into dx. Regarding N, just we have discussed for a truss element and also for a beam, that we have to use here for getting the nodal load vector also. What is F? F is the force, that is external force to which the member or structure that is subjected to. Now coming to this structure, for getting the, so these values already we have discussed, N1, N2, N3 already we have discussed, right? Now N equal to N1, N2, N3, N4, what we have discussed earlier, delta 1, delta 2, delta 3, delta 4, that is for getting the value of U. Similarly, for getting the value of equivalent nodal load for say due to the UDL, UDL will be W per unit length. It is acting downwards. So in the place of the UDL, will substitute minus W. Yes, this is the value. P equal to, so first value over the length L, it is N into UDL. Therefore, it is small minus W into dx equal to, that will give you the equivalent nodal loads. You get 4 values, right? Now next is, suppose if it is uniformly varying load, right? The span is 10 meters, 5 meters, 5 km per meter. For 10 meters, it is 5. What is the value for x? So that will give you x by 2. Therefore, in the place of x, we substitute minus x by 2 because downward load and rate of loading is x by 2, right? So that will give the nodal load vector, one simple element. So for this, like this, we have to derive for, see, the element that is considered may be triangular and maybe any shape of the element, may be subjected to irregular loading also. All loads are to be converted as nodal loads for which shape functions will be used. Next is, we have derived the element stiffness matrix, element load vector. Now we have to assemble everything and get K into U, capital K into U equal to, capital K is the system stiffness matrix, capital F is the system force vector, so U is the system displacement, right? Now, this you have to get. Now, let us assume, this is the fourth step, assemblage of element properties. See, suppose this is divided into four number of elements, right? Four number of elements like this, right? This element, right? So that is the structure. This is the discretized structure divided into number of four elements. Now we have to, now we know for each element, if you assume two displacement, there will be a 6 by 6 stiffness matrix for each element. So for four elements, if you do by element approach, it will be a 24 by 24 stiffness matrix. But we have to get for the global structure, it consists of only 12 nodes. So we have to get 12 by 12 matrix. Instead of assembling and getting 24 by 24, we have to get a 12 by 12 matrix. So for which you are going to follow the direct stiffness approach. So what we are going to do is, I'll give one simple example. Now, node number 1 and 2, displacement 1 and 2 corresponds to 1 and 2 of the structure. So 3 and 4 corresponds to 5 and 6 of the structure. 5 and 6 of element number 1 corresponds to 3 and 4 of the structure. So like that, we have to fix the element in the appropriate location. So from 24 by 24, you have to get 12 by 12. This will be a lengthy procedure. Simply, we have to relate. It is given the table, you can easily understand. So we are going to relate the numbering 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 with that of the numbering in the global structure 1, 2 up to 12. So there you are going to appropriately assemble the values. So say tedious. Yes. Now here it is given. One can easily understand because the element numbering and the global numbering are related. So to what part of the stiffness matrix element 1 will contribute, where element 2 will contribute. So that is given clearly, and all other values will be zeros. So this, hope you can understand. So this is the assemblage of global stiffness matrix from the element stiffness matrix. Similarly, we have to assemble the load vector also. Load vector also, suppose you consider this, suppose node number 4 of the structure, node number 4 of the structure, there 3 values will be added, namely from element number 2, element number 3, element number 4, all the 3 values will be added. Finally, we'll be getting only 12 rows. Otherwise, we'll be getting 24 rows. So 24 rows, from 24 rows, you have to assemble them and get only 12 rows. That means, say for 5 means you have to add the contribution to 3 and 4, and that you have to assemble. So that is how you'll have to get a 12 by 1 element load vector. Next is, so that, like that we get 12 by 12 stiffness matrix. Of course, I have not explained much because already we are running out of time. So introduction of boundary conditions. Introduction of boundary conditions, there are a number of methods. Introduction of boundary condition, why we have to introduce boundary condition means, initially when we have discretized the structure, we have assumed all displacements. All displacements. Now, the structure has to be grounded. Otherwise, the matrix will not be proper. Matrix will not be able to solve. The matrix will be singular. The structure has to be grounded. That is the necessity of introducing boundary conditions. Now, in this structure, at node number 1, it is hinged. So, both horizontal and vertical displacement you have to arrest. At node number 5, the vertical displacement is to be arrested. This is what is meant by introduction. Otherwise, the structure will have a rigid body motion, for which there are a number of methods. Large diagonal method, unit diagonal method, row column delete method, etc. So these things are discussed how to introduce boundary conditions. That is discussed here. Unidiagonal method. Then we have got large diagonal method. Then we have got the row column delete method. Row column delete method. Suppose you want to arrest displacement 2, you'll have to delete column number 2 and row number 2. So that is not comfortable for computer, because computer will have to renumber the whole matrix. That will be difficult when you write for loop or do loop. That will be tedious. Changing the number will be. So maybe you can go for this large diagonal method, or mostly unit diagonal method. That will be convenient. Anyway. So that is about the introduction of boundary conditions. You have to arrest the zero boundary condition, and sometimes you have to introduce known boundary condition. Not only zero boundary condition, in some points you may be knowing the value of them, so that also we have to introduce. So introduction of boundary conditions, right? So next is the calculation of primary unknowns. So this is the matrix. Stiffness matrix is a symmetric matrix. The non-zero terms will be clustered along the main diagonal. Stiffness matrix will be a symmetric matrix. So what we do is, there are techniques to store values only in the semi-bandwidth and solve. So many numerical techniques are available. So it is enough if you store only, as we have discussed earlier, 2,304 elements, we are reduced to 700 or something, and then we have discussed to 500 something. So in that matrix, the 560 elements can be stored and the problem can be solved easily. That is why there are so many techniques available. So this is something about the matrix, the symmetry of the matrix, semi-bandwidth, and the matrix that is supposed to be solved is shown on the right hand side. And also we have to observe that the matrix is positive definite. Diagonal matrix will be positive definite. So that is another important property of the matrix. Then we have got so many numerical methods. Cholesky square root method, off-band Gauss elimination, off-block technique, etc. Using any one of these techniques, after introduction of the boundary condition, we can solve and get the primary unknowns. So now U values we have obtained, K values we have derived, P values we have derived, and F values we have got, and now U values we can get. So these are the global displacements. These are the primary unknowns, because it is basically displacement approach. Displacements are the primary unknowns. So here, after getting the primary unknowns for any element that you choose, you can choose the element the displacement along the nodal coordinates. You can get, so epsilon, the strain is equal to B into delta, will give you the strain values, and stress is equal to D into epsilon. D is the elasticity, E is the strain matrix. Just we have obtained epsilon equal to B into delta, we can get the stresses. Now from the stresses, we can get sigma equal to D into E. In the place of D epsilon, you substitute B into delta from the previous step, you can get element. Normally the stresses will be calculated the Gauss points. Gauss points we cannot discuss now. That is why at the nodal points where we are supposed to get 0, will not be getting 0, will be getting some non-zero values. So the values will be calculated. The centroid of the element are Gauss points, right? So from this you can get the stresses. So displacements to strains to stresses. And once you get the stress, we can get the principal stresses, maximum shear stress, whatever we want, we can just get it. The output will be generally in the form of graphical form or tabular form. So the results by post-processor, it will be given in terms of table and in the form of contours. Will be different color coding will be there. So from the color coding, we will be able to find out what is the highly stressed area, and then we can design depending upon, we can redesign, interactive design, and so on. We can revise the design. So in that way, the method is helpful. Once you find out the displacements, then you can get the strains and the stresses. So the advantages of finite element method, because properties of elements are evaluated separately. Therefore, for each element, if there are two different thicknesses, that also can be separated, and that is why the finite element method has become so popular and so convenient. Any type of structure can be, any complexity can be handled. There is no restriction to the shape of the element, shape of the medium, arbitrary structure, irregular structure, anything can be solved. So any type of boundary condition can also be introduced. So and the method easily can handle factors such as non-linearities, non-linear material, non-linear geometry, arbitrary loading, time dependence, everything can be dealt with. That is why it is a generality of the method that makes the power method so popular and so appealing that the solution to a problem of wide range of disciplines in engineering. It is not only, it has been originally started for structural analysis, but it is applicable to civil engineering, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, many fields of engineering, mathematical physics, wherever there is a possibility of variational formulation of the physical problem, finite element method will be there. So it become so popular and widely adopted in many fields of engineering. If the problem is not properly understood, and then this method is a doubtful method, there are many reasons which make the matrix singular. That is the K matrix. Suppose if it is singular, we cannot solve. The matrix, if it is ill conditioned, we cannot solve. Similarly, violent variations in the element size used. So suppose you use a small element, suddenly large element, violent variations in the size of the elements used, it will also cause problem. Inadequate arresting of boundary conditions. If the boundary conditions are not properly arrested, this will cause problem. Improper choice of units. So units will have to be very careful, because we will give maximum space for different values. Bending moment means we will give so many number of characters. Like that, when you adopt kilonewton means throughout kilonewton, meter means throughout meter. Adopting meter units for the length and millimeter units for representing moment of inertia and Newton for that will not be there. So things are not properly followed, and that will cause ill-conditioned matrix. Matrix cannot be solved. And the proper checks are needed. Not only that, any software, normally we should not straight away use. We take some known problems in standard textbooks, any book. You take problems and apply for small problems with known results. So, and then we can go for bigger. So 2-3 problems you'll have to solve and then go for analytically. In the same type of problem, analytically you can do some small problems and then go for the application. Without knowing this, blindly if you are using the software, but therefore proper checks are needed for the application. It is known. So that is, this is about, for some more information, I have given YouTube lectures as Professor Balakumar has introduced. I have given some YouTube lectures regarding finite element analysis, lecture number 31 to 37. If you type Dr. Perumal Civil lecture 31, Dr. Perumal Civil lecture 32, like that means you can have some. So what we have discussed in brief will be available little more elaborate, and also myself and my guide Dr. Vaidyanathan, we have published a book of which structural analysis 2 is one book. The 3rd edition contains this chapter as the last chapter, finite element analysis as the last. So this we can use for additional reference. And so that completes my presentation. How to select nodal points for the analysis of finite element method. I given there are obvious points for selecting the nodes. Say namely wherever point load is there, wherever there is a change of rate of UDL is there, wherever there is a change of material property is there, whereas there is a division lines, wherever there is a change in the section. So there you have to select them as nodal points or nodal lines, and in between the remaining you can just divide into number of elements. There are some guidelines which I have discussed already. I'll try to show you. See for here these are some of the guidelines. Wherever there are point loads, where there is rate of change of loading, where there is change in the dimension of the members, where there is a change in the material. See, there is a plate or there is a pipe consists of steel, copper, etc. Where there is a material change or section change or load change or point loads. So these are the obvious locations for nodes. And in between, for example, if we choose the slab, we have chosen one node at the re-entrant corner. The other horizontal vertical lines are only division lines. So at all junctions you can have nodes. Any number of nodes depends upon that, but only thing is it has to be finite. That is why the method itself is called a finite element method with a finite number of nodes. We can divide the structure into infinite number of elements, but the solution may not be possible. So that is about, these are the guidelines where you can have nodes and nodal lines. So before concluding, I thank the management of PhD group of institutions, our beloved principal, Dr. P.V. Mohan Ram sir, our beloved vice principal, Dr. Chandramohan sir, our head of the department, Dr. M.I. Abdul Alim, our faculty members of civil engineering department, coordinators, Professor Balakumar and Professor Shakti Prasad. So I thank all and all the participants for your registration and full involvement throughout the presentation. So I have, so that's about my acknowledgement and thanks. And I have presented only the basic steps. I hope this will be helpful for opening any book on finite element analysis and read it.